You're listening to LVB Podcast Show with your friend, advocate, and host, Alvaro.
Hi and welcome to LVB Show. My name is Alvaro and I'm very happy to be with you tonight. Before I introduce our guest, I want to say thank you so much to people listening from the United States, from Canada, from Latin America, from Europe, from Australia. We have listeners in Africa as well. And I want to say hello to Nikki in Illinois, Pete in Florida, Elvia in California, Lynn, wherever he is, I don't remember, and other people listening from the United States. And tonight, our guest is Gerardo Corripio. He has been on the show before, but it was an interview in Spanish. He's from Mexico. He has studied in the United States. He has a very good English, I have to say. And he's a psychologist. He's a podcaster. He loves technology and he has a lot to say to us. He's blind, by the way. And Gerardo, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for being with us. Thanks for the invite. I've been a fan of your podcast ever since way back then. So it's nice to be here again, and this time in English.
My pleasure, Gerardo, and thank you for your kind words. I have to say for our listeners, I am very thankful to Gerardo as well, because thanks to him, I was introduced to NVDA, which is one of the leading screen readers in the world for Windows users. And Gerardo knows a lot about the screen readers. Thank you for that introduction about NVDA in the past, Gerardo.
Yes, you're very welcome. I'm sure we will get to talk about in how I got involved with NVDA and all of the good stuff.
Yes. My first question is, what is the cause of your blindness?
I was born 28 weeks premature here in Tampico. So the oxygen in the incubator, what was called retinopathy of prematurely. It involves the incubator receiving too much oxygen. Thus, the vessels in the retina. I see light. I only can see light.
Oh, very interesting, Gerardo. Um, I would like to know how come did you study in the United States and how was that experience like?
Well, first of all, my parents didn't feel comfortable with the what they offer here in Mexico in terms of blindness schools. This was in the late 70s, early 80s. I'm by the way from 1977. And so they didn't they wanted to put a blindness school here in Tampico, but they didn't have success. Then afterwards, we moved around to several places here in Mexico, the city of Oaxaca, which is in the southeastern, no, southwestern part of the country, and we lived there for about maybe 2 years. But then we moved to Mexico City, where I was in a blindness school for 6 months. But my parents didn't feel that I would have the richest experience possible. So thanks to a recommendation of a family friend who lived in the United States, specifically in Houston, Texas, she told my parents, go to the States. You will have better opportunities. So 2 months before turning 5, we were in the United States. I didn't know any English. And unfortunately, though, I lost a year of school because when we got there, school had already started. So I started school in August of 1983. I was mainstream throughout the whole school from elementary to high school, and it was a very unique opportunity. All of the textbooks were in Braille. School will loan me technology. I learned to read and write Braille, and the other abilities that would allow me to I'm sure we will talk about it soon, be able to study university in another country.
Okay, so Gerardo, after you did your studies there, you came back to Mexico, and you came back to the US to study college?
When I graduated from high school, we came back here to Mexico, and here in Mexico is when I started the university.
And did you go back to the US or no?
No,
Why?
well, first of all, when graduating from university, I had plans to go back to the States because I wanted to study a master's degree in blindness rehabilitation, but with all of the attacks of 9/11, all of the plans went south, as they say. So I ended up staying here, doing graduate work in humanistic psychology, and I started a life for myself here professionally with a private practice and studied other courses. So no, I never went back, though I had plans to, but I never got the opportunity to go back.
Gerardo, your English is very good. Well, I mean, spoken, written, you dominate the language.
Hmm.
To what do you attribute that good English that you have?
Well, in school it was all English, so I attribute it to the fact that in school I was surrounded by English, even though at the house we were all speaking Spanish, but in school and radio, TV, books, everything I tried reading in English. So the main focus in Spanish was spoken Spanish. So, but everything else was in English. Thus, and this is going to be interesting when we talk about it. I had to teach myself to read and write in Spanish.
Oh, wow. It's your story is very inspiring, Gerardo, you know. I would like to know, becoming a psychologist, why did it happen and how it was like to study in college being blind?
Well, I've always been. I went to a psychologist for a few months when I must have been about maybe 12 or 13, and I really liked the way that we got to talking, and I thought, oh, I could do that. I originally wanted to be a medical doctor and MD, but because of the blindness and the adaptive equipment and the like, so I ended up choosing an alternative. And so the closest thing that I wanted to do in terms of healing people, I might not be able to heal them physically, but mentally and spiritually, with mindfulness and visualization and other techniques. The psychologist area was the closest thing. And studying college abroad or university, um, the skills that I developed in mainstream uh, really came to fruition. The thing though that I had a hard time with was the language because I was so used to studying only in English. So when I came here to Tampico, imagine being in a Spanish only setting. First, I had to teach myself how to read in Spanish Braille. Then I had to teach myself how to write in Spanish Braille with the accents and the capital and the punctuation change in Spanish. I had to learn how to express. Um, Sorry, that was my iPhone charging. I had to learn how to express myself in Spanish. So it was a very hectic uh, very hectic road, but it was worthwhile.
Now, Gerardo, you studied psychology, you have worked in psychology, but you also have become a podcaster after that, and you love technology. Can you tell us how has been that change for you?
Back in 2000, I don't know if you guys remember, there was an English program on ACB radio by the name of Main Menu. And I used to be a fan of that one. And I would think, oh my, someday I would like to do something like that, but in Spanish. But of course, I didn't have the equipment or I didn't have the knowledge of how to do it. Then in about 2002 or 2003, this was when I had graduated from university and I had a lot of free time. There was a Spanish speaking blindness magazine and I wrote for that because again I wanted to to transmit to other blind people, but I didn't know how to podcast. So then the years went by, I continued to write for the magazine. Of course, it was all for as a volunteer. And then in about 2008, 2009, I started again the longing to be able to have a Spanish podcast revived. So I began to work with different studio programs, APH Studio Recorder, Goldwave. And so I stuck with Goldwave, and this was about time when over at iberoamerica.com, they were starting a Spanish podcast, Ciberaprendiendo, and they liked what I did, and they invited me as a collaborator. So that's how I got started in podcasting. And then from there in 2013, I was promoted to director of Ciberaprendiendo, again, all for free for the joy of doing it. And I kind of got tired. I needed fresh air. And in 2019, yeah, I think about 2019, 2020, I got out of Ciberaprendiendo. I was for a few months on another podcast, Actualidad Accesible, and but then I kind of got tired of that, and then I got to know the Anchor app, and that's when in October of last year I decided to take a risk and launch my own podcast for all accessible.
Now, accessibility is very important to you and to me. Can you tell us how exciting it is for you to learn the tools that we have available for us to make life more accessible?
Yes, and that is the one of the statements of the For All Accessible podcast, to the tools make better the quality of life. And yeah, it was pretty exciting. My trip with computers goes back to way back 1991, when I'm sure some of you remember HumanWare's Keysoft suite of programs. It was under MS-DOS, and then from there I proceeded with Windows, with JAWS, and it's definitely very exciting. However, the fact of the matter is that money is kind of tight, I'm sure worldwide, of COVID, and so if it were an ideal world, I would like to try everything and anything. So, but even with that limitation, it's very exciting to work and learn with what one already has, which in my case is a Windows 10 HP Pavilion, an iPhone, Google and Amazon speakers, an accessible smart TV. All of those is what I would like to continue to transmit, not only on the podcast but on Spanish WhatsApp groups, which and in English WhatsApp groups that I am on as well.
Gerardo, listeners to our show are very diverse, and they may be wondering what kind of technology to buy. What would be your advice to them?
Well, first of all, the if we're talking about smartphones, which is the most prevalent, it's what your budget reaches, what your budget allows. So yeah, the optimum experience is with an iPhone, but if an iPhone, even a second hand one is not possible, then go with Android. There are lots of myths that Android is not accessible, but now with Android 10, and because I'm helping a friend with his, I see how Android and iOS are little by little matching together in though Android has a little ways to go, but if the budget allows for an iPhone, but if the budget doesn't allow for an iPhone, then go with Android.
Gerardo, if you could pick, what are some of the biggest challenges that the blind community still faces today? What would that be?
Especially here in Latin America, the lack of opportunities and the lack of the general public that they still have the stereotype that apart from being blind, we are mentally handicapped. So a solution for that would be to go about with sensibilization workshops to help sense to help with making the public aware that we have the same mental abilities as the sighted population. The only thing we don't have is sight.
And Gerardo, speaking of challenges, employment is a big one. What can be done to improve employment opportunities for us?
Well, here in Mexico and in Latin America, you guys have in the States the ADA, American with Disabilities Act. Here we don't have anything of the sort. So first of all, apart from making the public aware of our abilities, some kind of an equivalent law would need to pass because discrimination is very prevalent here among the blind, and but also a route that would try in the meantime to remedy at least partly the employment is to go with self-employment.
Self employment for our listeners. Many people are trying that. Any tips or of becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, especially to enjoy what you're going to be doing. That's the overall one. And the other one, I would because I had a private practice for several years. So enjoy what you're doing, and to have the strength to cope with situations where, like one time I had a teenage girl with that wanted an emergency session with me, and so we got to the practice and I was ready, and the girl all of a sudden got up and left, and so I mean, it's you can imagine how I must have felt. So be prepared to cope with these kinds of situations where the sighted might not believe in you, in your abilities.
That's very true for our listeners. Gerardo, any final thoughts?
Well, the three words that I have applied in my life, and I'm sure will apply to your guys' lives, are motivation, perseverance, and and be on the lookout for opportunities that you might have.
That's a wonderful message for our listeners. Finally, how can people contact you?
Okay, you have me via email, via the social media, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp. That's the main routes you guys can contact.
Well, Gerardo, it's been a great, great, great opportunity to have you on. You're a great person, Gerardo, and I'm very grateful to you and to all that you do for others because you are a very generous person as well. So thank you, Gerardo, for your time.
And for Alvaro, thanks for the opportunity to be a part of the show, and I'm looking forward to continuing to listen to your upcoming shows.
Thank you so much, Gerardo. And for our listeners, if you want to be on the show, you can email me at lowvisionbureau@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at lowvisionbureau. So this is Alvaro from LVB Show saying good night.